Good News Sports is brought to you by Faith Life Financial and Wise Choices.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Edge on Good News Sports. I'm your host, Glenn Allan. Real men don't get depressed. Only women get depressed. Really? Then why in Canada are 4 of every 5 suicides committed by men? When depressed, men are less likely to seek help than women because most men view depression as a weakness and they keep it buried. Today, we're going to be discussing stigma and barriers surrounding men and mental health. To talk about this and more, let's meet the Edge panel here on Good News Sports, beginning with the host of the Drew Marshall Radio Show, Drew Marshall.
Glenn?
How are you, buddy?
Always good to see you.
Yeah.
Each and every day.
Each and every day. My next guest is an author and also is a leadership coach, and his name is Dave Loney. Dave, welcome to the program, buddy. Good to see you. Good to see you. My next guest is from the Bay Ridge Family Center, and he is a counselor. Please welcome Mark Laing.
Good evening. How are you doing, bud?
Good, counselor. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Mark.
And, of course, last but not least, the $1 Million Man from the world of wrestling, Ted DiBiase.
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
Good, buddy. How you doing?
Say, fellas.
I'm glad the shrink is sitting by the wrestler.
Well, we put him there for a purpose.
Oh, we've all been told we need a shrink.
Yeah, and did you know he just moved the chair like about 4 feet away as soon as you said that?
That describes every party you've been at, isn't it?
I promise I won't bite. Might body slam you, but I won't bite.
Mark,
Can we be funny during this episode? Because this is a heavy topic, man.
you do whatever you want.
No, but I mean, it's a sensitive topic, right? I mean, guys, we've got to talk about mental health and suicide and everything, and I don't know. I'm kind of wound up about this one.
Well, what do you want to talk about? You started.
I'm just saying that when it comes time to talk about mental health, emotional issues, and suicide and depression and all this kind of stuff, guys just shut her down. Absolutely shut her down. And we deflect with humor, right?
Oh,
Shrink?
absolutely. Absolutely. We don't want to talk about anything serious. We'd rather, talk about fishing, the football game.
Deflect.
Absolutely. Be funny, which is really one of the interesting things because depression in men and depression in women is often illustrated even differently. Men do it a lot more with anger. Mm-hmm. We don't think of depression that way. We think depression is curled up in a fetal position, crying incessantly. And yeah, there's some people who do that. Mm-hmm. And women are a lot freer to do that. But men, we miss that they're depressed because they have all this anger. We just think they got an anger problem. Actually, they got a depression problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for years, I mean, especially as a counselor, I mean, depression, I don't know if misdiagnosed is the right term. So many guys, not even misdiagnosed, because so many men have been suffering with depression and either didn't know it because they didn't know enough about it to go and get help, or they were scared to death to go to somebody and say, I need to go see a shrink. I need to go see a counselor.
Absolutely.
Because you're I guess deemed less than, you're weak.
At one time, the statistics said that more women suffer with depression than men, but the explanation to it is that women went to the doctor more often than men. They would go for any reason. Men, try to get your husbands to go to see the doctor was, worse than pulling teeth. It wasn't going to happen. So it wasn't that really more women suffer from depression than men do. It's just that more women went to the doctor and got diagnosed than men did. But as you pointed out at the top of the opening here, 4 out of 5 men, are males that commit suicide. Mm-hmm. Even when you look at things like crimes, violent crimes, people who have bipolar depression can do some pretty wild and crazy illegal things. And
why don't you just give us a little bit of a definition, if you will? I know mental health illness is broad, but for what we're talking about this evening, especially with the depression, because even depression is broad because it falls into various categories.
Right.
And there's the depression definitions, mental health definitions, but also what's the difference between that and sometimes I just feel sad or sometimes I just feel down. So, but let's start with the definition of maybe depression and mental health illnesses.
Well, certainly depression is an elongated period. It's not just about sadness. It's a sense of hopelessness. Mm-hmm. I'm so empty inside.
For how long?
For more than a week or two, that's for sure.
A lot of
it's
times
ongoing.
It's
It's not that I have a couple of days I'm bummed out, the Leafs lost,
Oh,
I don't
if
feel
that was
good.
the case, no.
Yeah. But when it starts going on into 2 or more weeks, now there might be more to this.
Yeah, and you know what? In doing being able to do another program, a television program, and talking to Dr. Beeling at the Mood Disorder Clinic at St. Joe's in Hamilton,
The Mood Disorder Clinic?
Mood Disorder Clinic.
My wife should go there.
But hang on, this is their criteria to kind of hone in on depression. 14 consecutive days in a row, not 10 of 14 or what. It's 14 consecutive days in a row of certain.
I feel hopeless.
Yes.
I don't feel anything inside. You know, people who commit suicide, a lot of them refer to it as the dark place. And people think that when you get actually to the point of suicide, it is a sense of just having no hope.
It is that's severe hopelessness.
Well, actually, you know, having been there and done it and bought the T-shirt.
What do you mean? You've been depressed?
Oh yeah, I'm bipolar. So
How can you be a shrink and be bipolar?
Well, because there's treatment for it.
Really?
It's research.
Sure.
That's research, yeah, that's true.
So, you know, in my early day when I made a suicide attempt, you know, I'm here to tell you that at that point, it was not about a matter of feeling hopeless. I had all kinds of hope. I hoped that God would forgive me. I hoped that, you know, I'd wake up in a better place. I hoped that the people left behind me would get on with their lives. I had more hope than I'd ever had. What I didn't have was a sense of not only to be able to love, but to able to really work in that language of love, to feel it, to feel like I've got some kind of significance.
Well, was it a lack of self-worth?
It's more than that. It's beyond that. It certainly plays into it, but it's as though, you know, we derive a lot of our self-esteem from just the whole notion of love, that I'm desired and I can desire somebody else. But it's as though that particular element in my life is a foreign language I can't speak.
Dave, you wrote the book "Sweating from Your Eyes." It's a book for men on emotional fitness. Mm-hmm. Where does mental health and where do you fit into all this?
I wrote the book. It's a little bit of my journey. I took a look at my journal, which is something that I do to help me deal and help me process. I write things down. I take notes, and I kind of swear at the pages as opposed to swearing at my kids. And I took a look at what I was saying over a number of years, and I thought, well, there's some good stuff in here, and I decided to write a book. And ultimately, what I related to was that we need to work out our emotions. We need to, just like we go to the gym, and we need to work those things out. And I was finding myself in what I determined was a can't zone. You know, depression, despondency, kind of downward spiraling into low character emotion. And from that, I'd boomerang up into anger, outward, and I call that the destructive zone, the D zone. I just boomerang there, and then I'd feel badly because I'd done that, and bang, I'm back down to the can't zone. So I'd be oscillating sometimes on an hourly basis.
Masculine about being angry.
Oh yeah, I got to do something, right? But then you feel bad again, and it's how do I get out of that? How do I move out of those two places? And I noticed other people were in those areas as well. How do I get into a quietness of heart?
Are these things totally mental or and emotional, or are they brought on by physical symptoms? Are there like
bad diet and stuff?
The deficiencies in
caffeine? I'm sure at a certain point in time, caffeine can throw you.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
I'm in that case.
It's a nature and nurture problem. I mean, it's not a brain deficiency. I refer to it as a neuronal deficiency. Your neurons, or the nerve cells, the little gap between one nerve cell to the next, puts all this chemical out to send messages back and forth to the brain. The problem is there's not enough chemicals. So the pills that you take put more of that chemical in the body.
Right.
And that helps it. But also, because it's a nurture problem, it can also be triggered by things like I was abused as a kid, or, you know, my parents were alcoholics, or I was in some traumatic event. I lived in a war-torn country. These also can play a point as well. So taking the pills are not going to cure you. They're just going to help take the edges off so you can finish the work.
But how do you sort all
In
that
other words, make it more
all-
manageable.
Yes.
It's sorting all that out, though. I mean, someone with a nature issue or a nurture issue,
Yeah.
and both, and then you
And how
look
many
at
guys
it on
wanna
a
talk
daily
about
basis.
nurturing?
Yeah, and deal with it. I mean, how do you sort that all
Drew
out?
can't even spell the
you're
word.
40-year-old man, 45-year-old man, and life's throwing you some curveballs. You lose your job, or things aren't working out at work.
Especially today,
And all of a sudden, how do you
downsizing and
work-
stuff like
how do you
that,
deal
yeah.
with it?
With the pill thing, and you got God guys here, and we're talking about God stuff in the show as well. In the church scene, isn't that poo-pooed? You shouldn't be going on any meds. Just pray and let
There
God
are
will fix you.
certain churches that condemn that, and I just shake my head because
It's irresponsible.
I see it is. I mean, a pastor is telling his congregation, providing medical advice. Excuse me, but how do you know?
But hold
lot
on, but
of
we
fear
do jump
around
to the
it,
pills too early, do we not? Do you not think so? Do we jump too early?
Do you know a doctor that does that? Have you ever, it's the same line as somebody saying, only go to a Bible-believing church. I've yet to walk into a church that didn't believe in the Bible.
yeah.
It might have different interpretations of it.
There lies the problem.
But
But we are in a pill-popping generation, are we not? Pill-popping culture?
well, certainly the people on the street.
My
who wanna-
emails tell me we're in a pill-popping
the
culture.
people who want to do the recreational drugs are pill poppers.
Right.
But people with depression and so on and so forth, I mean, we're always looking to medicate. When you look at people who are alcoholics or drug addicts, a lot of time, the problem isn't the drugs, the alcohol. The problem is they have a mood disorder. The drugs, the alcohol, are just their ways of medicating.
Yep. A lot of times it's almost like the chicken and the egg thing
Sure.
as to what's coming first. We have to take our first time out, but when we come back, we're going to continue this talk about men and mental health. More Good News Sports right after this.
The preceding segment has been brought to you by Faith Life Financial.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Good News Sports. Glenn Allan alongside Drew Marshall, Dave Loney, Mark Laing, Ted DiBiase. Today we're talking about men and mental health. Before we went to the break, we got talking about the whole Christian counseling thing, and there are a lot of really good counselors who are Christian.
Sure.
But for those who say, and there's pastors, I believe they're irresponsible in the church. Number one, telling parishioner, get off your medication, God will heal you. I don't not believe for a second that God can heal, God can do miraculous things. Mm-hmm. God also says, has blessed many people in their professions.
Right.
And
Obviously not some pastors.
yeah, well, exactly. But
Can't be right all the time.
What you're trying to say is God will use the physician
exactly.
and,
well, you bring
and modern medicine.
Mark brings
to
up
do
a great point, and you need open heart surgery. The most talented guy might not be someone who's saved, but you're going to go to him.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I need the knowledge base. Are you competent? And again, I just get so frustrated because I have people come into our clinic and they're telling me they're pastors. They're saying, you don't need the drugs. They feel shamed in doing that. And
Which is part of the stigma.
Absolutely. And then that also can feed into the depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so they flip-flop back and forth. Do I believe the therapist or do I believe my pastor who says drugs are bad and the therapist telling me it's good is evil?
How about the holistic approach where you maybe do a bit of medicine, you do a bit of spiritual health thing, and you do a bit of physical health thing? Like just
To me,
attack it all.
that
Balance.
is the balance of providing mental health services that were mind, body, and soul. That, the hardest part is sometimes when a client comes in is deciding at which level do I start? Is this do I need to start with the mind, the body, or the soul with this person? And if I just have one model, it's always, and this is a difficulty with a medical model, for instance. It's just always about putting pills in. What's the problem? Or cutting something out.
The older generation, from my understanding, because I'm not part of that, Ted, maybe you could understand this a little bit better. See, I'm tough when I'm sitting over here.
You are going to get so body slammed.
I can't walk around the table.
But the older generation, there was a sort of ignore it, it'll go away, ignore it, that kind of a deal. And to be honest, when I feel any depressing stuff coming up or whatever, I do that whole ignore thing. I really do, because inevitably it does go away. Sure. So then it
For
wouldn't
you.
be. Well, yeah, for me. So you wouldn't categorize that as full-on depression. I'm going through a bummer of a time, right?
Well, not if it's, a few days.
Right.
But if it's now, it's 3 weeks, then
I
there's
can't
a problem.
ignore anything for 3 weeks.
The thing is that some people, we call them rapid cyclers. you know, the period that they spend is relatively short, but they could have a lot of them. We used to talk about situational depression. It was famous, you know, university students, you know, he meets her first year, they break up third year, he goes into this depression, and they say, oh, it's just a situation, you know, he's depressed, he'll get through this. But we don't really look at it that way anymore. We look at it as saying depression is like a river underneath this guy all the time. And for him, every once in a while, he's got this hole in the ground called a situation that allows him to feel safe enough to let it out. But nonetheless, the depression is there, and it still needs to be treated like any other depression.
Let me ask you this, and you touched on this before the break, and Dave, I want your input on this as well. When I had to go for my treatment, they were getting ready to put me on medication for depression.
Right.
But then I had my suicidal incident, landed me in the hospital, which in turn I chose to go to detax, went to treatment, and talked through the unresolved issues, unresolved resentments, blah, 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 was never put on medication.
Good.
Because in my case, I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but in my case, I had to deal with the post-traumatic stress disorder. I had to deal with the trauma, which chemicals medicate pain. I dealt with my pain, therefore I didn't need the chemicals of the alcohol and the drugs.
Right.
But not, and different strokes for different folks. I mean,
But not everybody needs the pills.
but still, we talk about we're medicating without allowing a person to talk about what's really going on inside.
Exactly.
And that's where I'm coming from. And that's where the mind, body, and spirit, the whole thing comes.
Is there a way, because I don't know a lot about this, is there a way to recognize this in somebody? I have two cases at home where two young people, two teenagers, that for all practical purposes lived normal lives. Had, a matter of fact, one of these kids was the best friend of a neighbor across the street from us, and very good family relationship. No outward side that there was anything wrong. And one day they find him hanging in his bedroom. Is there any way to recognize those things? Are there warning signs that you can look for?
Well, there are signs. It's just that most of us don't recognize them. And especially with teenagers, we often think a lot of the behaviors that they show are just, oh, well, it's just a teenager. They're, you know, they're going through that time.
To diagnose them.
Yeah, well, it is and it isn't. It's harder for the parents. When you bring them into a professional, it's like, you know, this isn't, you know, a moody kid. This is a depressed kid. People who want to commit suicide are not usually the ones to leave the notes. They want to do it. They're just going to do it.
So this is an ongoing want. This isn't just a fleeting thought or driving down the highway. And,
no,
hey,
you know, and
pull off the road. You
right.
know, that's a fleeting thought, right?
That's a fleeting thought.
But it's this ongoing.
I'm going to end it. You know, if you were able to have a conversation with them, they would tell you how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, where they're going to do it. They have a plan. You know, if you ever run into somebody who says, you know, I'm feeling suicidal, ask them the question, well, if you were to do it, how would you do it? If they give you a plan, you need to call 911 on this guy. Yeah. And don't be afraid that they'll hate you for the rest of their life. They might not. But
at least they'll have a rest of life.
At least they'll have a rest of a life.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You hope it's a good, long, and healthy hate.
Yeah. Exactly. But then there's suicidal ideation, which is, you know, not that I would do it, but, you know, if God struck me dead right now, I wouldn't be really upset. Those people can make suicide attempts. They're the ones that may leave the notes, more likely leave the notes.
A little bit more of a cry for help.
Exactly. But if you start seeing your kids' grades dropping, they're starting to withdraw, they're not hanging out with their friends as much as they used to be, listen to the music they're listening to.
What about the men, though? What about the men? I was reading up before the show, and I was looking at this going, how do I tell whether or not I'm depressed? Like me, right now.
Right.
Ask your wife.
Yeah, you could ask my wife.
Is that fair? Is that,
actually, that's a great way.
You get the pain in the body,
good answer?
right?
Yeah, good answer.
Pain in the body, pain in the stomach, headaches, all that kind of stuff. Well, you get headaches for various reasons. You can eat the wrong food.
But headaches aren't part of the depression
pain
scenario.
In my shoulder. That's
what are some of the symptoms that a man sitting at home or a wife sitting at home watching this right now? What are some of the main symptoms?
The first one is a persistent, uncontrollable cluttering of down, sad, negative thoughts that you can't keep out. It's like a broken record. It just keeps on going on.
Would that be the 14-day?
The
14 days
that's
in a row.
What's going on for 14 days or longer.
Consecutive days or longer.
So as a Christian, the joy of the Lord is my strength. I haven't been feeling joy for a number of weeks,
not feeling
months.
anything.
That's clinical depression.
That's,
Okay. Or
no joy,
going towards
no
that.
Peace.
Okay. I mean, you could be bipolar and going into a manic phase, 3 weeks later, but feeling hopeless, unable to feel relaxed or content, thinking about suicide. And here's
Sounds
another.
like every guy I know.
Well, that's how big this problem
Really?
is.
Let me a quick stat here. It's estimated that 56 million North Americans suffered from a mental illness in 2005, to which 10% received appropriate treatment.
Oh, hold on. Are we not just getting suckier? Because 50 years ago, are you saying, like, because I'm doing that comparison thing, right? There's no way those stats were going on 50 years ago. Or are you just saying that 50 years ago we were faking depression? We were man enough. We just pushed through it, and that wasn't healthy either. Are we being more real these days?
But how many guys back then were medicating it through booze and beating the crap out of their kids?
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
And also,
and their wives.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, when you look
Absolutely.
at drug
Now-
abuse, even alcohol abuse, these are growing problems, as has been depression. You have to also take into account, you can't say, well, in the 1940s, I don't think there was as much depression. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. Maybe just, as you're saying, they're going home and drinking and beating their wives. The point is that here we are in 2006 in a much different world with a much bigger sense of stress.
But there's more of an identification, though. There's more of a, geez, you know what? My dad was like this, my grandfather was like this. We're putting a name to it.
Right.
Where you look and say, you know what? This has been something that's been going on in my life or someone else's life for a long
They
time.
didn't even know it.
Exactly.
The number of times.
That's why it's not. It's like sexual abuse.
Right.
They say 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys. Well, I would beg to differ. It's just that the boys don't report as much until they get older.
Who wants to?
Exactly. So, I mean, you come into the stigma. I don't need help. I'm a man, and I'm just going to go down to the pub, and I'll be down there for 12 hours and not come home.
We're idiots, eh?
And then
Yes,
you do come
are.
home and you tear up the house and beat your kids and your wife.
But it's how men communicate. I mean, men communicate from a hierarchical position. You know, 2 women meet at a cocktail party. It's, what's your name? You got any kids? Where do you live? 2 men meet at a party. Within seconds, what do you do for a living? Okay? And it's already the contest begins. So if he says, I'm the vice president, and the other guy says, I'm the janitor, it's like dead silence for a moment. And it's like, oh, gee, I think I'll get another drink. It's nice to meet you.
Let me go talk to somebody I can identify with.
Exactly.
Right.
Really?
Women are about building rapport. Men are about building reports.
Right.
You know, 2 little girls playing doctor say, I'll be the doctor, my baby, you'll be the doctor, your baby, and we'll be doctors together. 2 little boys playing doctor, I'm the doctor, you're the patient. We're directive.
King of the hill.
Absolutely.
The only thing I can think about is a guy and a girl
quickly,
playing
10
doctor.
seconds.
Is that not good?
No.
Okay.
And you know what, guys? We have to take another time out. One thing I want to make real clear is if we can help you out, please go to our website, goodnewsports.ca. All right, back right after this.
The preceding segment has been brought to you by Wise Choices.
Welcome back to The Edge on Good News Sports. Listen, guys, if you've been feeling down or you're consumed with anger for no apparent reason, you may very well be suffering from depression. The good news is you don't have to suffer alone. It takes great courage and great strength to ask for help. For more information or resources, please check us out online at goodnewsports.ca. Until next time, remember, there's always hope when you're living on the edge with God.
Good News Sports has been brought to you by Faith Life Financial and Wise Choices.